Welcome to the House of Brand, where we help unleash the true potential of your brand. If you're a business owner, leader, or C-suite executive and you're ready to scale your business to new heights, you're in the right place. I'm Torey, Azure, your guide in turning your brand into a strategic advantage for your company. In each episode, we get straight to the heart of what it takes to build a brand that drives growth, that shapes culture, and fuels your marketing efforts. So let's get started.
Hey, welcome to House of Brand. We have another episode here with Paul Carew. Paul works for our agency, which is Brandcraft, out of our Boise office. Longtime Boise guy. If you want to hear more about his story, you can check out one of our previous podcasts. We kind of give the background of Paul and how we ended up here in Boise. So welcome again, Paul.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I think what we'd like to do is follow up on really which was our previous episode in which we were talking about this idea of the brand definition and the messaging platform, and then how that influences design. And it got me thinking about a subject which is really at the 30,000 feet level, but maybe an idea that how does it influence marketing? And I think someone watching might say, well, it is marketing. Whenever you're doing brand, you're talking about marketing. And I would say, okay, it is. I can't completely disassociate it from marketing, but I would say, yeah, but brand is I think it's more of a boardroom exercise that turns into visual identity that starts to bring the marketing team in. But really, it's an exercise of defining who we are and why we're doing it and how we deliver value to the customer. And of course, that's very top level marketing. But what it isn't is the actual tactical marketing. So in this, I think I would like to get into, okay, we've done this brand definition. We've got words, we've got visuals. Now, how do we take this to market, and how does having this brand guide help us take it to market? So I think it should be a fun conversation. With that, let's just hear your thoughts on that. Like, what do you think top level? What do you think, just as you hear that, how does having a more complete brand guide and a definition in which we've really worked to define it, how does that help as we move into marketing?
Yeah, I think, certainly there's a lot of terminology that gets thrown around in the industry, and there's even a term brand marketing, which I think is actually a really great term for what we're talking about. Is how do we take a brand platform and activate on that to go to market, if you will, with a marketing plan around that. And I think the everything we learn in that brand process is crucial to how we do choose to go to market and amplify those things that we've decided on with our brand platform.
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest things in marketing is we determined during the brand process how we talk about ourselves so we can provide clarity to those that are looking for something we're providing, right? So we go through a lot of work in saying, well, we know some of the pain points of our customers. This is how we solve for it. And so we try and document that so it's clear. We don't always, it's interesting. We talk about it a lot. We don't always include personas and that work in our brand guide. We could put a lot of that work in. But with really complex organizations, sometimes there's a multitude of personas and a multitude of different verticals within their organization.
Sure.
And it's not always the best time during brand. Brand is more 30,000 feet. Like, this is who we are and this is how we plan to do it. But you could get into personas. You get into so many different things before you get into marketing. But what do you think? Maybe the question's best answered if we go backwards. We've had these clients come in and they have no real strong brand definition. They've got an identity guide, which is their logo, what not to do, what to do. Yeah. And they really just want to go fire up marketing. They're ready. Let's go do it. Let's go get some marketing started. And what type of failures happen when we do that? And there's not always failures, but it's more likely to fail in that scenario.
Yeah, I think it's especially even more complicated when it's a B2B2B or a B2B2C company or situation where we've got maybe a channel we're dealing with that's then selling to end customers. Things can get complicated pretty quickly. I think that the short-sighted what can happen in that situation is we're amplifying product qualities, we're amplifying reasons to buy, but we're not building that long-term relationship with their customer and partners. It's based on smaller decisions. It's not the big picture of this is why I want to build a strong relationship with this company.
A lot of features and benefits is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And a lot of not knowing what the biggest differentiators are is a lot of guessing.
Yeah.
And I think that ultimately what happens, I think, when you don't have a strong brand definition is marketers, because they know they need that information. And I bet, Paul, I can think back on times that we have done this, where we basically are trying to define a brand on the fly.
Yeah.
Every campaign we come up with and everything we're doing, we're trying to define what the brand is because we're getting nothing from our client.
Right.
And I won't lie that at times we found success with that. And then other times we just couldn't get anything to work or anything to stick. And when we say not working, what are we talking about? Not working could be not getting a strong response to marketing, having to spend too much to get the response we're looking for. Maybe even the client isn't exactly happy with it, and neither is the consumer. Neither of those is great. I would say we're probably willing to take our client not being happy if the consumer is just loving it. We'd be like, hey, I think you need to look at this. But yeah, I think we're trying to define it as we're trying to market. And so the line between brand and marketing, I would say, okay, brand, we're really trying to define and document where we are, where we're going, why people choose us. And that I think requires a lot of just steadfast leadership from leadership team and founder. Yeah. Like, hey, all we need to do is tell them about you guys and why you're different. I think it's a lot like being a human in that stage, which is, at some point in your life, you get to where, hey, people like me for who I am, or they don't. Yeah. And that's okay. But I have to surround myself with people who like me. And all of us get to a point where we become comfortable with who we are. Some less than others, but that's okay. We still gain more and more confidence as we get older. Brands, I think, should do the same, which is, hey, we have to figure out who out there wants to be friends with us. In other words, who wants our product? Who likes the way that we're doing it? Because we can only be ourselves. Yeah. Imagine not knowing any of that, though. And imagine just saying, imagine if you said to me, hey, Torey, can you go out there and find some friends for me? I said, well, tell me about you. That's not important. Just go out and find me a lot of friends because I want them to surround me and I want to have, obviously that wouldn't work. So I think it's a problem that, is interesting, but a lot of agencies do it. Yeah. Why do you think that we get stuck in these projects where we don't know the brand very well, but yet we're trying to create these marketing campaigns for them?
Yeah, I think it's sort of a common situation, I think, to be in. And, luckily we are a brand-centric agency. So say we're hired just to do a website or just to do a digital campaign, we're going to ask those questions and dig a little deeper. It may not, of course, it's not a full brand exercise. We're not doing that, but by nature, we're asking the right questions. And I think that's why a lot of our one-off campaigns or situations like that are a great chance to explore some of those ideas, prove some of those ideas, and be able to talk to the client a little bit more about, hey, if we took this step with branding, we could do a better job of being more pointed in your advertising and marketing. And I think it's advertising 101. I remember my college professor saying this quote, and it stuck with me my entire career. If you emphasize everything, you emphasize nothing. And I think that's really the key with marketing, branding, and brand marketing is really, again, what are we going to hang our hat on? Because if we're going to hang our hat on 5 things, it's not going to be believable or stand out.
Yeah, that's good. I gave a presentation a few weeks back about how brand is like the DNA of your company. And I used a graphic that I stole from a little bit. I didn't realize I stole it until I saw Simon Sinek when he gave his talk about the why is in the center.
Yes.
I started thinking like that's exactly it. That has so much, and realizing that he'd been talking about it for 10 years, right? And I'm finally coming around to what he's talking about. And I said it a bit different, but I really said a brand is a promise that's embraced by leadership and by the team. And then it's lived by the whole organization. So the organization decides, yes, I want to work here and I believe in this and that's why I'm here. And then finally the outer ring, if we're going from the middle, which is promise, and then we're going out to embraced and out to lived and then out to shared. Yeah. This idea of shared, like we do all this work to figure out who we are. The last ring of that is I'm going to go share this with the world, right, or with just my audience or with just my community, whatever it is, what kind of business you are. This shared is actually the marketing part, which is all we're doing in the center part is figuring out why we're doing what we're doing. Often founder, often leadership, they're kind of making this is, and then we're trying to say, okay, let's create a system in which we embrace this and we're all working on one thing together. Let's bring people in who live this. So like that, those are our employees and those are our team.
Yeah.
And ultimately all that's left at the end, and which would be so easy for marketing, is say, hey, why don't you just go share our story with those people out there and see if they have values that align with ours.
You bet.
And when I put all that together, I'm like, well, that is actually what we're doing all the time.
Yeah.
Which is we're not trying to tell the consumer, like us because we can become whatever we want to you. We're saying, here's us, here's what we do, here's our brand. Do you think you'd like us? Because we think you should. And then we try and get those people that like us, which is, I don't know, do you think that's an interesting way to think about it? And do you think about it that way?
I do, and I think the important group that I think must participate in a brand process is someone from the sales team. And
Yeah, we say that too.
we can do whatever we want with marketing, but if that call isn't going to be answered or that follow-up doesn't fit with all of that, we've got to disconnect. We failed. So I think that it's really important. The other aspect is these salespeople they talk to the customer every day.
I think that's such a big reason that we
Yeah.
want them in there is
Yeah.
they understand the customer pain points and the customer decision points so much better than most everyone else in the organization.
That's right. Yeah, and sometimes getting those people in the same room to have a brand conversation, that alone is of huge value to the organization, because there may be things that the C-level or founder doesn't know that's happening every day, or we may be marketing something that the salespeople don't know about, and it really is an organizational wide agreement to have this brand promise, to live this brand and follow it up every day.
Yeah. I think on a really great brand, I'll just leave it at that. I think with a really great brand, you can almost read through it, like the documents that we make. You should be able to read through it. And honestly, I think you should be able to almost imagine so many different campaigns in your mind that it should really unlock that for a good marketer. You should be able to read a brand book and a brand guide and say, brand book, not guide. Those are kind of two different things in our office, but you guys might define it however you want. But for us, the brand book combines the messaging with the visuals into one. But you should really be able to say, gosh, I can almost imagine exactly what marketing would do from this. Like I can imagine what we would do. And I think if you ever get stuck in marketing, you should be able to go back to the brand book and reacquaint yourself and re-inspire yourself to say, you know what, now I've got more ideas. I can go back to the drawing board. So I think that's a great way to use brand too, which is this idea that we're just going to feed you ideas, but really marketing team, take this. And I know, Aaron, who's been on podcasts before, likes it, or this is a good visual for him, is when I say like brand is really the lens in which we look through the brand to determine how we're going to market later. We just use it as those glasses to put on to say, okay, what are these campaigns going to look like? And, all campaigns do end up with some features and benefits and those things, but all the messaging should really be driven by that brand.
Agreed, and I often put myself in the shoes of our marketing director clients in many different industries, and I think that having this determined, having this brand book is really like, okay, we've made decisions. We don't have to talk about these things anymore. We can focus on what's really important.
Yeah.
Making sales, gaining new relationships, whatever the goal is, we can focus on goal number one and not go back and forth on this layout or this typeface or this color. We've got it all nailed down, and more importantly, we've got messaging that can be used. A lot of times our messaging in brand books can be a campaign that starts running the next day. These are our statements, messaging statements, brand messaging statements that we're going to use to amplify, and we can start doing that right away.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some evergreen messaging in there where you're like, there's certain concepts where you're just going to keep revisiting it. Again, we won't mention any big brands, but anybody that consumes or that is on any kind of platform will know you've seen your favorite brands out there. And there's always certain things I always fall back on. And that's really that brand promise or the brand. There's certain things that they keep hitting on. And then other campaigns with venture off a little bit, but they still will come back to like these really important evergreen concepts of what makes a brand different. And you can always go back to those, which is what the great part is. Like, I can imagine some brands now that have had the same slogan, just reiterated over and over again. And they've had success with it, so they've kept it for 10 years. And they freshen up the look, but they keep with that same slogan, which, I imagine was a big part of their brand definition when they did it.
Yeah, well, and I'll say sales teams love a brand book, a brand document. Now they don't have to make up a script or find a way in with a customer. It's predefined. This is what we're known for. This is how we go to market, and this is how we build relationships.
It's a separate podcast, Paul, but I'm always shocked when we talk to companies that don't interact between sales and marketing well.
Yeah.
In other words, the teams are just separated. And when you talk to marketing, like, oh, we don't like to talk to sales, and sales doesn't like to talk to marketing. And I can't think of a situation that could be least productive than that, which is we're always like, we need to hear from everybody. Yeah. In fact, the sales can inform marketing so much on what we should push out there for messaging. Yeah. It's just shocking sometimes to know like how those two teams shouldn't get along. I'm not here to be the chief revenue officer and tell companies how to run their company, but it's just surprising to us sometimes about how little integration there are between sales and marketing. And, really sales and marketing should be very aligned with leadership and with, even the founder. They should all be very well aligned. And I have a personal thing where I think that founders often give up too much of the wrong things early, and they should hold on to some of those things a little bit longer to see how they're doing, or at least have a lot of oversight. And I think the brand is definitely one, and that might even carry all the way down to sales and marketing.
Let's face it, the sales folks are the mouthpiece.
Yeah.
It's really important that we're all on the same page about what's going to happen. And the real beauty, when someone asks us what's the value of a brand, is when your customers start hearing that back. Here's why I chose you, because of this. And oh yeah, that's our brand. That's what we do.
Yeah, I think that that sales, I think, are used to being a very performance driven type of personality and I think sometimes the way that they view problems are great, especially in marketing. If you can identify problems that we're having or the customer's having, or you can identify situations which create demand from the customer, we would love to hear those. But I think sometimes when, sales within an organization will say, well, marketing sucks at creating leads and all they do is deliver us unqualified people. Right. There probably is something deeper in that if you asked them, you'd get actually real information. Right. But when it's said that way, it's just like, I don't want to deal with, Johnny over there in the sales team anymore. He's so rude, or all he does is say this. And so I think it's a communication thing probably, that the better the communication is, hey, we could really use to improve our lead quality. That would be a statement in which a marketing team would probably understand, and that probably leads to more of the miscommunication between the two teams is we're not speaking the same language, so how can we talk to each other?
Yeah, well, and in some ways it's almost like an old school ABC test, like a manual ABC test, if you will, of, our sales team can go out and test these messages and get feedback. These are the ones that are really resonating. I'm making more sales when I lead with this. That's so great to bring that back to the marketing team and bring that back to leadership. It allows us to really, again, allow that brand to evolve and become what it needs to become.
Yeah. And I think that team could always realize that, maybe they're like the wide receivers on a football team, right? Yeah. The ones that always want to say, just give me the ball, just give me the ball, just give me the ball. And you're like, hey, if we can establish the run game, if we can do this, if we can do these things, you're going to get a lot more catches. And if we win the championship, you're going to make a lot more money. Everyone starts to listen a little bit more, right? So in other words, there's something in it for everyone if we work as a team and if we do the things. And maybe that's the concept that we're talking about, which is between brand and then to marketing and even into sales, like that, everybody working as a team ultimately leads to the best product and wins for the organization, which everybody benefits from.
That's right. Put me in, coach. Yeah.
Put me in, coach.
Sure, yeah.
No or doubt. Throw me the ball. Throw me the ball. Yeah. Well, Paul, this has been a great conversation. I like that we kept it very top level. We'll dig into more details on all of this at some point. But with that, I appreciate you being on again.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And for you guys watching, appreciate you watching. So stay tuned for our next episode of House of Brand.